Hi, I'm Brett. I just watched Zack Snyder's Justice League, and I want to take a few minutes to share my heart about this film with you today. I've made a couple of videos about the movie Batman v Superman. I really loved that film, and it touched my heart in a special way. And I felt after watching Zack Snyder's Justice League the compulsion and even a little bit of a responsibility to share my heart about this film and how it touched me. I did cry multiple times watching it for a lot of reasons that I want to share with you today. Now, you may already kind of know the story behind this film. It's one of the most dramatic stories in superhero history, but the drama didn't appear on screen. It happened behind the scenes. This movie was originally released in 2017, but the filmmaker Zack Snyder wasn't able to finish his original vision, and in fact, a lot of meddling was done with his vision. We are just now seeing what he intended, the director of that movie, Zack Snyder, what he intended for that film to look like, and it really is beautiful. It doesn't surprise me in some ways that Zack Snyder's work would be meddled with, because he is a little bit of a controversial figure as a filmmaker. Some people love him and some people hate him. For me, that divide really comes down to the reality that Zack Snyder, he's not a realist. As a filmmaker, he's just not. Now, what I mean by that, I'm not talking about the storylines or the characters. You know, those are never going to be realistic in a fantasy or a science fiction or a superhero story, right? That's never realistic. But most directors in Hollywood, once they receive that fantastical script, they create a filmmaking tone and style that is realistic. They're trying to make it feel like this is the real world. This is really happening. You're seeing real people in a real place at a real time. Zack Snyder does some of that, but he's a lot less concerned with it. He's really a poet with a movie camera. He has an operatic soul in him. And so he's more interested in creating cinematic operas that have a lot of metaphor and allegory and visuals that are much more figurative than they are literal in their portrayals. Now, Zack Snyder's Justice League works at that level, as does all his work. For me, it's perfect because I've always seen DC superheroes as more mythological than realistic. And I love that about these characters. In fact, I made a movie, a documentary film called Legends of the Night, which talks about Batman as a character of myth and folklore and the impact of that in our world. You should watch it. And so for me, I love the idea of a filmmaker that's taking these characters and creating a new age of mythological heroes. And that style of filmmaking, I think, is very beautiful and very inspiring. But the challenge with creating movies that feel like operas is that the drama lends itself to a lot of the characters being in grief, being lost, sad superheroes, right? And that's been some people's concern about this. They might like seeing superheroes fight all the evils and injustice and bad stuff in the world, but they don't want to see that in their superheroes. They want to see superheroes fighting the external problems, not necessarily all the internal ones. Now, back in 2017, when this movie Justice League first came out, I could understand why people would be concerned about that and why they wouldn't want it. But I actually think the powers that be gave us a gift by delaying the revelation of this movie and the original vision of it to now, to March 2021. Because I don't think it would have quite resonated with us the same way. I don't think it would have resonated with me if I had not had the year that I had over the last 12 months. Maybe you feel the same. And so watching a film about superheroes that are struggling with identity, with meaning, with purpose, with who they are and where they belong, that are grieving losses, that are feeling afraid and isolated and alone, characters who are really struggling as much within themselves as they are out here. I don't know about you, but that's my story over the past year. The character that I resonated emotionally the most with in this film is not a character that I was expecting to. It was a character that has been in all three of Zack Snyder's superhero movies with Superman, but not one that had gotten much attention from me. You know, if you watch the narrative of Superman in these films, there is that S on his chest, but he says in Man of Steel that it's not an S, it's a Kryptonian symbol for hope. For hope. And then by the end of Batman v Superman, Superman is dead. Symbolically, hope is dead. Have you felt at the deepest part of yourself the death of hope over the past year? Maybe you've turned the corner on that. But I can think of many moments when I really struggled over the past 12 months with feelings of hopelessness. That things that really mattered to me and were important to me in my work, in my family, in my life had been lost. And I grieved that. In fact, I suspect that we have not even allowed ourselves yet to recognize and to feel all of the losses and the mourning over the past year. The personal losses, the losses within our families and friends, the tragedies and difficulties on a global scale that we have gone through together over the past year. The moments when we did actually wonder if this was the death of truth, justice, and the American way, and whether we would ever get it back again. For that reason, I really resonated in this movie with Lois Lane. Like her, maybe you've been doing a lot of grieving and a lot of wondering if there is good ahead and how you will get through it. How you would go back to living a real, whole life again. And the reality of whether that was even possible without the presence of hope in the world. And so every morning, Lois would get up and go through her routine, maybe like you've done over the past year. She got her 2 cups of coffee and she went and visited the memorial of hope, of the wondering, the questioning of whether there would be hope in her life again. And maybe even at this moment, you are struggling with that question for yourself or for the world. Maybe you feel lost. Maybe you feel broken. But you are not alone. You are not alone. And we were never meant to be alone in the world. But if you are struggling, it's okay. There are people still in the world who care about you, who care about your heart, who want to help you. Reach out for help. No matter how you feel today, don't stay alone. If you have moved past some of that in your life, then maybe you can get some inspiration from Batman. Batman, who starts out in Batman v Superman as this independent vigilante character who absolutely knows what's right. And on his own, he is committed to going after it. It really doesn't matter who gets in his way. It really doesn't matter who tries to stop him or who disagrees with him. He knows what to do, and he is going to do it. But in the moment of Superman's death, he realizes that the world is much bigger than he thought it was. That life is much bigger than he thought it was. And he changes his direction. His initial life mission that was built on a vow that he made at the grave of his parents, that he would alone fight and defeat evil in the world. At the end of Batman v Superman, he makes another promise on another grave, the grave of Superman. And in that moment, he makes a transition of living and acting from a place of fear to a place of faith. putting his belief not just in his own power, but in the power of what it could look like if all of us came together. Because they've never fought us, not us united. And his belief, his faith that he could bring those people together is an incredible, healthy, beautiful, open arms movement in his world, where he moves from being a vigilante in the world to being a leader. As we move out of this difficult time of crisis that we have gone through, separately and together, it's that kind of vision and that kind of heroic spirit that we need. The belief that we are better together than we are alone. And that sense that maybe it's not our job to just prove the other person right and personally defeat them, but instead to make an invitation. Maybe it's to get on a horse and ride across an impossible mountain trail that would kill anyone else, to risk your own life, to reach out to another person that might seem indifferent and say to that Aquaman or woman, join us. Join us. To take the risks not just to get what you want and get it your way, but to listen, to care, to share, which is what Batman does in this movie. And it's an incredible transition and a fulfillment of his arc as a character. When I did a video for Batman vs. Superman a few years ago, I talked about one of the major themes for me in that movie about moms. About mothers, about Martha, and about the fact that Superman and Batman, their mothers had the same name. And on a very personal level, that drew them together. That allowed them to have empathy for each other, to understand each other, and to see the humanity within each other. And Batman regained so much of that. Zack Snyder's Justice League isn't so much about mothers. In fact, it's actually much more about fathers. If you go through the characters in this movie, so many of them are dealing with things having to do with their father. The Flash is visiting his father in prison. Victor Stone is going through a situation with his father and trying to reconcile with him. And it is a moment of sacrifice that brings them together. The climactic moment of Superman's rebirth and him launching in costume back out into the world is filled with the voices of his two fathers. Even Steppenwolf is driven by his desire to please the father figure of Darkseid in his life. Fathers pervade this movie, as the stories of mothers pervaded the stories of Batman v Superman. But that is what wholeness is about. It's about integrating the energies of both the masculine and the feminine of the father and mother into a whole person, and learning how to channel all of that in a way that leads the world forward and makes it better. I don't think it's a throwaway line at the very end of the movie that Martian Manhunter says to Batman, to Bruce Wayne, "Your mother and father would be proud of you." That statement encapsulates his developmental arc in all of the movies, because he has gone from being a vigilante to being a father. He is now the father of the Justice League. He is the one that has brought them all together, which solidifies the reason in the first place that having an older Batman in the narrative was an intentional choice, because he would go from being an angry old man to being a mentor, and to creating space where the light in all these other heroes can shine. Because at its core, being a hero, being a leader, is not about gathering up more followers. It's inspiring the leadership and the heroic spirit in others. And that's the beauty of that climactic battle. Every single person operating in their giftedness to save the world. That's what unity is all about. It's not about getting 3 boxes together to force everyone to conform with no free will. No. Leadership and unity is about each one of us sacrificing of ourselves to bring out the best in others and to invite them on a mission to do something extraordinary together. That's a beautiful picture of who we already are and what the potential within us is and what we could become together. But that only happens, it starts with hope. That belief that change is possible, that things in the world can be different, and that each one of us are powerful to create it. To me, the most powerful moment in this film, the moment where I lost it, it's a simple moment. It's a subtle one. After Superman has come back from the dead and he's carried Lois off, he instinctively returns to his farm in Kansas. And after they land and Lois and Clark talk for a minute, Lois takes his hand to guide him home. There has been so much darkness in the world recently. I've felt it. You've probably felt it too. Today I want to invite you to reach out your hand to someone, anyone, and help lead hope home. We are so in need of it and have been. You making a choice right now that you will be an ambassador for hope, that you will believe, that you will have faith, that the future is good, and that right now in this present moment, we can make decisions and take action that will lead to a beautiful future. Not just for you, not just for your family, but for all of us. To me, that's the beautiful message of this film. That no matter where you are today, no matter where you find yourself, whether it's in deep grief or it's in a readiness to take action, that you can be a force for light, for good, for unity. And that together, with belief and faith, we can lead hope home. Thank you to Zack Snyder and the entire team for your relentless pursuit to bring this movie to the world. Thank you to all the fans who rallied together to make it happen and to release the Snyder Cut. I hope we'll see more. I hope we'll restore the Snyderverse very soon. And I'm excited about that journey together. Thanks for being you. Have a heroic day.